Hello, everybody. We're going to call this meeting to order of the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee for Monday, November 20th, 2023. Are there any potential conflicts of interest anybody wants to identify? Yes, Brian, go ahead.
I have a conflict of interest with item number 6 on the agenda tonight.
Okay. So noted. Anybody else? All right. Citizens' comments. Go ahead. Nick, if you want to go to the lectern and turn on the microphone.
I met everybody formally. Oh, there's Steve. Hi, Steve. Well, thanks for having me, everybody, and thanks for, first of all, Jennifer, Steve, everybody involved with taking a look at the city's insurance.
Can I just pause? Name and address for the record.
Oh, thank you. Nick Arnoldy, Marshfield Insurance Agency, citizen of Marshfield Insurance, about 20 paces north that way. So address 208 West 5th Street. So again, thanks for having me. Thank you for the time taken. I think it's been some time since we've gone through the process and taken a look at some of the options that are available outside of the current coverages for the city. Marshfield Insurance did finish a proposal, had an option. I just want to give some brief highlights, and then I'll hang around for any questions regarding insurance in general or our specific proposal. The current makeup of your plan is with the League of Municipalities, Great Insurance Plan through Spectrum Insurance in Eau Claire. We are Marshfield Insurance proposing a plan through Community Insurance. Community Insurance does insure some other cities, West Bend, Waukesha. They are the current insurance provider for some of the coverages for the school district as well. So a notable insurer of both municipalities and schools. Some of the uniquenesses that we found in the League's plan: no two plans, whether it's a homeowner's policy, an auto policy, something as simple as that, are going to be 100% the same. That just doesn't happen. Each company does have their uniquenesses. So with the League, they have some pretty great coverage available as far as no-fault sewer backup. That is unique to the League, and I want to explain what that is from my perspective, and you can confirm with the League. So if there's a water backup in any building, whether the city's negligent or not, they will pay the claim. That's the no-fault version. The version with Community Insurance for water backup, for example, is fault coverage, meaning they will provide coverage if the city's at fault or negligent. So it's less of a charity, if you will, type of coverage. So it does protect the city if we're negligent. Homeowners and building owners can purchase for roughly on average about $100 coverage for themselves for that type of thing. Looking at your December minutes from last year, it looks as though that particular coverage item is running about $33,198. Expiring rates, those rates may have changed, probably a tick up this year. So my suggestion would be to look in whether you go with Community Insurance or stay with your current plan. Take a look if that's something that you really need, depending on the circumstances that you have, if that's something you want to maintain. Because with Community Insurance, for example, again, they will pay a claim if the city's negligent, and property owners can buy their own insurance for roughly about $100 for water backup. It looks as though the League of Municipalities has a dividend plan, so a return if there's a profit with the League or with your current plan. The 3-year average of your dividends is just a hair over $24,000. I mention that because Community Insurance also has a dividend plan. It's specific to workers' compensation, though, and the 5-year dividend plan average with our plan based on your losses would be $55,289. So we did the math on that. With the League of Municipalities, it looks like we're currently providing some protection for the utilities with the relationship that we do have with the utility department. In that, the errors and emissions for the utility department and their employment practice liability insurance is billed through the city's insurance. Okay, so when we did our quote, we did separate that out as an option. That might be something you want to look at and say, hey, utilities, maybe shift that cost over to them. I'm not sure the breakdown on the current plan because that wasn't in the minutes from last December, but in our plan, it makes about a $40,000 difference. Okay, so somewhere in that $30,000 to $40,000 range would be my assumption if you stay with the League and carve that out, but you'd have to confirm that with the League. Last thing that I'll mention with the League, you have a blanket property policy. So all your buildings, your contents are lumped into one particular limit. And that limit can be used for any building. So if we've got rough numbers here, I've got the total numbers, well, let's say 100 million in property coverage, you can use that on any one building, and it's not subject to any limitations. You can use that 100 million anywhere. However, most property blankets have co-insurance, and all co-insurance is with property is that they want you to insure 100% of replacement cost of the total blanket. So for instance, if we have 100 million of coverage, and there's actually 200 million in property valuations, we're only sitting at 50%. The league, if there's a co-insurance provision, will penalize that difference. So on the claim check, if we're 50% off, your claim check's gonna be 50% off. We're 10% off, that claim check's 10% off. So that's a really quick kind of overview of co-insurance. I can break that down a little further, but I'm trying to be expeditious. I mention that because the community insurance provision for their blanket doesn't have a co-insurance provision. They can't penalize you for underinsuring, but they do have a limitation of 125% per building. So they have a blanket policy, but they will limit on your statement of values. If you have this building for 5 million, they'll give you 5 million plus an additional 25%. They don't give you the whole blanket, but they can't penalize you for underinsurance. So this is where there's some differences between the two companies, and no one company is the same. Some other quick items that I just want to mention. There is a $10,000 liability deductible with community insurance. You currently have the expiring liability deductible of $1,000, much lower. I took a look at that expense over the last 5 years. Had you been with community insurance, there would have been an out-of-pocket on average of about $52,000 more of out-of-pocket, just pure deductible expense. Now, that's a liability-only deductible. That doesn't apply to autos. That doesn't apply to any physical damage of anything. That's specific to property damage and bodily injury. So if the rates were a little bit less, say $70,000 with community insurance, obviously we build that $50,000 average expense back in. We'd have to do the math to see if that makes sense. Lastly, I'll just mention that there are different deductibles for autos available. Replacement cost on roofs is available, built into our policy, I think similar with the league. After 15 years, though, it does go to actual cash value. Those are the coverage highlights that I'd like to mention today, and I'm here for any questions, and I do appreciate the opportunity for us to put together a proposal and take my suggestions, so thank you.
All right, thank you, Nick. Is there any questions for Nick from the committee? Any questions? No. I'm sorry, I know it was citizens' comment, so we'll just move right past that. All right, number 4, consent agenda, minutes of the November 7th, 2023 meeting and bills and payroll. Go ahead. So Ed's gonna move?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Seeing none? 5 is going to skip over because there were no items removed. 6, request to recommend council approval to authorize staff to execute various insurance renewal agreements presented by Jennifer Zelensky, Finance Director. Jennifer.
Good evening. So to begin with, I just want to clarify, in the memo, what I was thinking of was I was combining the results of the RFQ and then approval of those costs. We need to take a step back and just do those one at a time instead of trying to combine both items. So first, I will go through the results of the RFQ and seek approval of the recommended vendor, and then we'll work on the what the actual cost for 2022 based on updated data would be. So earlier this year, I was asked to reach out to local agents to determine if any local agent would be able to compete with the city's current provider of insurance, which is the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. During that search, I sent an RFQ to 11 local agents and the incumbent provider. Of that, the results shown, 5 did not choose to contact me back for the invitation. So assuming they weren't interested or couldn't provide the services that were listed. There was one who could not compete given the time frame. They didn't feel they could give adequate quotes, and another could not compete based on the cost of the 23 premiums, which all respondents that did want to participate asked what we were paying in 2023. And then another local agent couldn't compete because the underwriter had already been contacted by another agency, and that underwriter's policy is only one quote per customer. So and then of course, we had one respondent along with the league. My intent with the RFQ was to ensure that the city did not lose any coverages, so providing the best value for the cost. A team of 3 staff members, including city clerk, HR director, myself, and Alderman Wagner from Common Council met and reviewed both responses received and determined that based on premium cost, deductible levels, and experience in the public entity market, staff recommends staying with the current provider, the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, for its liability and property insurance. The League of Wisconsin Municipalities is underwritten by their mutual insurance company for liability policies and MPIC for their property. One thing to note, our agent, which is Spectrum, for our crime policy, used the Travelers as their underwriter for its crime policy in the past, but they are referring that to the League's insurance going forward in 2024. Also to note, our airport policy is insured by Tricor, and they submitted quotes for 2 underwriters, and the better deal would be to switch from AIG to Chubb for a little bit of a cost savings there. The decision was based on the League having lower premiums, lower deductibles, and just its experience in the marketplace. One of the questions submitted with the RFQ asked how many municipalities your agency works with, as well as your underwriter. The respondent, the local agent, works with 3, and their underwriter works with, I believe it was 70, whereas the League has 470 municipalities, cities, and Spectrum, who is the agent, has 102 municipal clients. So really, the League has a niche market with the public entity, and that experience kind of shows in the way the policies themselves are written. Mr. Arnoldi did touch on a couple of those nuances with the no-fault. We have no-fault sewer through the city, and then Marshfield Utilities has no-fault water. So 2 separate no-fault policies. Community insurance does not provide no-fault coverage as indicated. This would also apply, we have a $10,000 no-fault on-premise medical. So somebody slips and falls, twists an ankle on city property, up to $10,000 coverage is provided regardless of what happened for that. Also, a couple of other things I'll just touch upon since Mr. Arnoldi did. The dividend plan, on average, that was $55,000, but there were 2 years of 0. So, and within the materials provided, even community insurance says we can't rely or guarantee a dividend. So trying to incorporate that in a budget to offset, possibly higher premiums or deductibles is risky. We don't budget the dividends that may come from the League. Those are a windfall once they occur. Also, Mr. Arnoldi brought up the Utilities Commission. That is still something we're working on. Our policy does have a special endorsement labeling Marshfield Insurance as an additional insured, or Marshfield Utilities as an additional insured. However, we're looking at how that premium is costed. And I don't have a final number yet today for what that's going to be. Right now, the city picks up that coverage and does not bill Marshfield Utilities for that service. As far as replacement value, I posed a question to the respondent and the league using an example where we might have this building insured with the property and contents for $7 million. If the building suffered a disaster and we had to completely rebuild, what would be the insurance benefit? Mr. Arnoldi did say that's qualified, even though we're insured up to 100 million on any one building, it's 125%. The league, we're insured up to the maximum $150 million. So we would, if it costs $10 million to replace this building, we would be reimbursed for that $10 million. As far as, he also brought up the roof issue, none of the city's roofs, I believe, are newer than 15 years. And if something catastrophic were to happen to a roof, the league would pay for that at a full replacement cost value and not qualify that for roofs newer than 15 years. And then the deductibles, that difference between $1,000 deductible and $10,000 is really meaningful. We would have, had we had a $10,000 deductible, we would have had probably that average of $50,000 more in deductibles every year. But what that means is we don't budget currently to have accidents, right? So if there's an accident and we have to come up with $1,000 deductible, most departments can maneuver in their budget to pay for that. It would be a hardship to come up with a $10,000 deductible. We have that example going right now with an accident involving our fire department, where they're scrambling to find a place in their budget to pay for their $5,000 property damage deductible. So that would be a real hardship to switch from $1,000 to $10,000. And I did ask the question, what would be, could you quote at $1,000? And their underwriter cannot do that at this time. So, and the other area in the policy that I'm still looking into with legal is the defense we have, the non-monetary claims, i.e. tax appeal cases, and what kind of coverage we currently have versus what we could potentially have with another provider. And it looks like that we would have to also pay for an endorsement for that kind of coverage. And then without seeing what that endorsement policy is, we may not be covered specifically for tax appeal. And I think that's just a difference between a commercial driven insurance company versus one that's focused on public entities. And that service level that the league provides, because they understand that tax appeals happen regularly and routinely. So all of those factors combined, staff recommends staying with the current provider, which is the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, and then TRICARE for our Aero policy. And then, so I'd like to make sure we're on the same page there before we talk about the costs for 2024.
Okay. Questions? Natasha?
Jennifer, would you happen to know in a given year, how many times are we triggering a deductible?
We do have our loss run report, and I don't have it pulled up, but it could be, it's all dependent. So if we wanted to wait, I could pull that up. But it's multiple times. Anytime a snowplow hits an object on the road, or a police car, does a pit maneuver and causes damage, those things happen probably 20, I would, if I had to guess, 20 would be a number.
In a year?
Potentially. Outside of workers' comp. Workers' comp is much higher, but that's a whole nother animal.
Ed?
Thank you. And Jennifer, I didn't know, is it a city policy that if a loss occurs with, a liability occurs within one department, that department's budget has to stand by it? It's not sort of, we don't have a separate standalone fund for paying claims
We don't.
or deductibles, I'm sorry.
We don't.
So that means that they've got to fish around in their budget and find the money to pay for it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I think if nobody else has any question, I'll put a motion on the floor to approve the recommendation by Jennifer. That's to engage the league municipalities in insurance.
Excuse me, sorry about that. So we do have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Jennifer, do you still have the floor?
I do.
Okay, go
So part of my memo also addressed the cost of premiums for 2024. So when we went through the RFQ, the data that we provided was the best that we had at the time, which was July, was when I was developing this. So it's based on information that we use for 2023-ish rates. So since then, I've learned that the league does every 5 to 7 years, a revaluation of your property on the statement of values. And so that was also taking place this year. So there will be a little bit of a bump in the premium for our property. It looks like our workers' comp is going to be down. I do want to circle back and make sure that we're using our budgeted payroll, and that would be sufficient for that coverage. And then we are still looking at the public officials' liability and the coverage involving Marshfield utilities. So I'm waiting for both Nick and the league to determine how we're going to proceed, and that may impact the amount for 2024. So I'm hoping to have that all by tomorrow for the budget meeting. So you'll see the updated costs and the staff recommended changes at that time. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Natasha.
So are you referring to page 11 of our packet? That would be.
I am. So
Okay.
those are the amounts that were quoted for 2024, but there's going to be some adjustments as new information for 2024 becomes available, because at that time we were using the payroll for the prior year. So in order to have apples and apples for the RFQ, we had to have a set of data that was most reliable at the time. So that payroll could change, or should change based on our budget for 2024. I believe the rest of the policies, with the exception of public officials liability, and the other one will be set. So and the property. So I think the property is going to come in a little higher. I just don't have an exact number for you yet today. So that'll be approved tomorrow as part of the budget process.
Any other questions? No? We're not looking for action on this, right? Okay.
I don't think so. We don't
For
have, I mean, we
information.
don't have the best data. I just wanted to point that out, that that's not the number that you'll see in the budget ultimately.
Okay. All right, we'll move on then. Number 7 was pulled from the agenda back in December. Number 8, request to recommend council approval of joint library agreement with Town of McMillan, presented by Jill Porter, Library Director. Jill, can you please come to the lectern?
Thank you.
I just want to say lectern a couple times.
Okay. As many of you know, or those of you who have been around for quite a while, the Marshfield Public Library is actually a joint library, which is one of the several forms recognized by the state of Wisconsin. And a joint library basically means we work with another municipality to finance and run our library. In our case, it's the town of McMillan. And going back many, many moons ago, there were some pretty horrible lawsuits regarding this, because not only does our joint library cross city lines, it crosses county lines, it also crosses one of the 17 borders that are set up by the library systems within the state of Wisconsin. But town of McMillan residents voted to join us, and through multiple lawsuits, they finally got to join us. And I think my personal hunch is that after that was all said and done in 1999, and they had an agreement on how the library was going to be funded by the town of McMillan, no one ever wanted to look at the agreement again. And what has happened because of the way the fees are calculated, we've seen some pretty dramatic swings in the past few years, in particular, COVID, that sort of thing, because the formula that's most often used is based on a cost per circulation model, which means we take our total operating budget and it's divided by the number of physical circulations, so a book, a CD, DVD, none of our digital resources, and that ends up with the cost per circulation. It's how Wood County reimburses us, it's how Clark County reimburses us, and that's primarily the way that the town of McMillan has historically reimbursed us. The problem is these joint or the cost per circulation model ends up having some pretty dramatic swings. And one of the things the town of McMillan was interested in was coming up with a way that we could kind of smooth that. We couldn't totally alleviate some of the swings. We never know what usage is going to be. And it's ironic that the more your usage goes up, the lower your cost per circ is, and vice versa. So we took a look at it, and really we just came up with a really simple method where we took the previous 2 years and what the actual or the prior year would be if we hadn't averaged it, and said that's the formula we're going to use. Now, there is some Wisconsin statute that says there has to be a continuity over the 3 years, that you can't be paying significantly less per year, but it's just to give us some consistency moving forward. Library Board has looked at it extensively, and it's also gone through legal counsel on both our end and the town of McMillan. So I'd be seeking your approval to move this forward to the Common Council as a whole.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Questions? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by Brian, second.
I'll second.
Second by Andrew. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, there you go, Jill. All right, number 9, request to recommend council approval of resolution number 2023-60, adopting the city's 2024 fee schedule, presented by Steve Bark. And he is on the phone, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. I hope everybody can hear me. I know there have been some sound issues, but let me know if that's not the case. Yes, as you indicated, this is about the 2024 fee schedule that's proposed. Just a little quick background. The city adopted its first fee schedule several years ago. It was actually the brainchild of former Community Development Director Jason Angel, who thought it would be good to have all of our fees in one place. And that started first of all with development services, but his goal was to have that reach out farther into all the city departments that assess fees, bring them all into this resolution over time, and have a schedule out there that citizens, contractors, and others could kind of find as one-stop shopping for their needs in terms of learning what the various fees are for city permits and other things that they might need to procure. So it's updated annually at this time of year for the following year, and it's revised over time based upon a couple of factors. One of them being what neighboring municipalities charge. We tend to check with Point, Rapids, Wausau, and others around us to see if our fees for various permits and services are in line with them. Also, we look at the cost of services over time as well. What does it actually take in terms of administrative staff time to provide the permit, to do the inspections required, that type of thing, to make sure that we're truly recovering our costs. So every few years, you'll see some of these get updated as we find out that there's a need to bump them up a little bit, be commensurate with the true cost of the service being provided. In this case, for the 2024 proposed fee schedule, there really aren't a whole lot of changes, and I'll highlight them really quickly. Perhaps you're looking at them on the screen in front of you. The first one starts with the bottom of page 2. A number of fees are increased or proposed for increase related to plumbing. And these are basically to hit that minimum of $50 we've established for most of our fees as a basic cost for, again, the permit and the service required from staff time and administrative effort. There is one other fee in plumbing that's going up from $60 to $70 to combined for sewer and water service. And then we're creating a new permit for grease interceptor, also set at $50. In planning and zoning, we're upping a few fees. The fence permit for both new residential and non-residential would be bumped up to that $50 amount from $30. And again, we're trying to establish over time $50 as our floor, per se, for the service provided. And then we're adding some land use permits for the parking lot, replacing $50, alterations $100, and new parking lot $100. And then also, you may recall we're going to have the chicken ordinance, if it was passed, be operating under the city clerk's office as a license. We did change that as part of the revised ordinance to a permit-based operation running out of the Development Services Department. And that fee we want to establish at $100 as well. There are other fees below that in the resolution. You'll see engineering, GIS, and public works. There were a number of recommended upgrades there. Those have been brought through the Board of Public Works. I believe it was earlier this month, and recommended for approval. So they've gotten the proper review. And then fire and finance both have some fees that are assessed, and none of those are proposed for increases in 2024. So what you have overall is really fairly tame, mainly getting us to that $50 threshold, and then a few other adjustments as well. Staff would recommend that the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee recommend council approval of Resolution 2023-60 to establish the 2024 city fee schedule.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions? I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve this fee change schedule and pass it on to council for approval.
So that's a motion by Natasha and a second by Brian. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Seeing none, that will go on to the council. Number 10, request to recommend council approval to promote Justin Wilhelm to the position of Mechanic 2 with the Street Division, presented by Sarah, Human Resources Director.
Thank you. Tim couldn't be here tonight, so I'm speaking on his behalf regarding this potential promotion. So currently right now, Justin Wilhelm is a Mechanic 1. Based on all of the experience that he has and the qualifications that he has now, Tim is requesting that he move into the Mechanic 2 position, and then we will discuss later potential increase. But so at this time, I would be asking this group to promote Justin Wilhelm to Mechanic 2 position.
Thank you. Questions? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation.
All right, we have a motion by Andrew and a second by Natasha. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes. 11, adjourn to closed session under Wisconsin statutes 19.851C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. This will be a request for variance from policy number 3.800, compensation, and we are going to be discussing two separate cases. I'll take a motion to go into closed by Ed, second by Brian. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Roll call.
Tompkins?
Yes.
Varsho?
Yes?
Wagner?
Yes.
Barrows?
Yes.
Weigel?
Yes.
All right, I think we're in closed session.